Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world where sugarcane sways beneath a burning sun, where chains clink louder than birdsong, and where one man claws his way from bondage to the throne, only to drench that throne in blood. You're about to step into the sandals of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the first ruler of Haiti, and possibly the angriest emperor to ever wear silk robes. You will see things that will make your heart pound, your jaw clench, and your pillow feel oddly judgmental. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know, what city are you in right now, and what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're born into nothing, not even a birth certificate to argue with. The exact year? Somewhere around 1758. The place? Most likely on a plantation in Cormières, near the lush, humid valleys of Saint-Domingue, the French colony we now call Haiti. There are whispers that you came from West Africa, sold into slavery as a child, but that may just be myth. Historians still argue whether you were born in Africa or on the island, but either way, your first memories are the same: sweat, fire, and the sting of the whip. You learn early that breathing in this world comes at a cost. Your body belongs to someone else. You wake before the sun to work in fields where the cane cuts back. Sugar is wealth to the French planters, and the process of making it, grinding, boiling, pressing, isn't just exhausting. It's deadly. You watch friends collapse, vanish, or get fed to the machines. That's not poetic. That literally happened. You're branded, yes, branded like livestock. You're punished for walking too slow, for talking back, or sometimes just for existing. Once, you step out of line to help a fellow worker who's fallen. The overseer whips you raw. He says you're insolent. You remember that word, insolent. It sits in your chest for years like a stone. One day you'll use it as a weapon. Despite everything, your mind is sharp. You watch. You listen. You don't speak much, but when you do, it's with eyes that burn. You become known among the enslaved as someone who endures, someone who doesn't break. And breaking is common here. Suicide rates among enslaved Africans in Saint-Domingue were tragically high. Many chose to leap into waterfalls or starve themselves rather than live another day. Religion becomes your escape. Voodoo, Catholicism, ancestor worship, all tangled together in the spiritual gumbo of the island. One ceremony you sneak into under moonlight stays with you forever. Drums thumping, smoke rising, a goat's blood spilled to honor the Loa. You aren't sure what it means, but it feels like something ancient stirs awake inside you. And then you're sold. Again. This time to a black freedman named Dessalines, from whom you'll take your surname. The man works you hard, but with less cruelty. Still, freedom remains a ghost. You start learning French, not because anyone teaches you, but because you overhear it. Plantation owners whisper about the revolution erupting in France. Heads are rolling in Paris. The king? Gone. The queen? Gone. Liberty, equality, fraternity, for white men mostly. But ideas are like seeds, and even in this scorched land, they start to take root. You hear tales of another enslaved man, one named Toussaint Louverture, leading uprisings in the north. They say he rides a white horse, that bullets don't touch him, that he speaks like a lawyer and fights like a storm. You don't believe half of it, but you believe in the fire. You feel it coming, like thunder rumbling under the dirt. And one day, it does come. It begins with smoke. A plantation set ablaze in the dead of night, then another, then 50. The slaves are rising. You're in your early 30s now, strong, cunning, and done with waiting. You take up a machete, not a sword, not a musket, just the tool you've used to chop cane, and you step into the night with no plan but one: no more masters. Your rebellion starts with just a handful of fighters, tattered clothes, borrowed knives, but every victory adds more. You burn fields, raid stores, free others. You stop being a name on someone else's ledger and start becoming a legend. One fact mainstream history loves to gloss over: this wasn't just a slave rebellion. It was a military campaign waged by tactical geniuses against one of the strongest European empires of the day. You learn guerrilla tactics quickly. Hit fast, hide in the mountains, starve them out. The French aren't ready for this. And honestly, neither are you. But you adapt. Late one night, by firelight, a grizzled officer hands you your first musket and says, "You've got the eyes of someone who doesn't flinch." You don't. You haven't in years. The boy who once limped through Cane Rows is gone. In his place stands a man with vengeance in his blood and a storm on the horizon. And you? You're just getting started. You don't just hear the revolution, you smell it first. It's the smoke. Thick, bitter, clinging to your clothes, your nostrils, even your dreams. The scent of sugar plantations burning under the moonlight drifts on the wind like a warning and a promise. You've joined the fire. Your machete is stained. Not with cane juice this time, but with blood. Some of it French, some of it mulatto, and some of it from those caught in the chaos who didn't move fast enough. This isn't clean. This isn't heroic. This is war, and war is always ugly up close. In 1791, the north of the colony erupts. Boyce Cayman, the voodoo ceremony turned rebellion rally, has passed into legend. But you don't care much for legends. You care that nearly 100,000 enslaved Africans have risen, almost overnight. This wasn't supposed to happen. The French don't understand it. Frankly, neither does anyone else. Historians still argue whether the initial uprising was spontaneous or carefully orchestrated by secret networks. Some say the leaders of the rebellion were planning for years. Others believe the rage was just waiting for a spark. You? You felt that spark smoldering in your chest your whole life. Saint-Domingue isn't just any colony. It's the crown jewel of the French Empire, the world's richest sugar producer. And its wealth rests entirely on human backs. Which means, if you topple the system here, you don't just win freedom, you cripple an empire. But it's not just you and your machete now. You've joined an emerging rebel army led by Toussaint Louverture, a brilliant tactician with a philosopher's mind and a general's fire. He's the closest thing this revolution has to a brain, and people follow him like a prophet. You follow him too, at first. Toussaint plays chess while the rest of the island plays checkers. He makes deals with the Spanish, then with the British, then he switches sides again. You're not sure who he trusts, maybe no one. But he keeps winning. He organizes rebel slaves into disciplined forces. He enforces strict codes, no looting, no rape, and definitely no drunkenness. You find it noble, if a little irritating. You're more comfortable charging forward than tiptoeing through diplomacy. Under Toussaint, you rise. Quickly. Your leadership is raw, aggressive, and impossible to ignore. You get results. When they send you south to clear out enemy forts, you do more than that. You raise towns. You make examples. People start calling you the tiger. Not as a compliment. There's a fringe detail most textbooks miss. One of your preferred punishments for French soldiers was forcing them to march barefoot across flaming sugarcane stubble. It's exactly as bad as it sounds. You wanted them to feel the land they stole. With each scream, you say, "This is justice." But Toussaint, he doesn't love your methods. He's trying to build a black society that earns France's respect. You're trying to ensure France never forgets your fury. Still, for a time, you serve loyally, because the mission is bigger than both of you. And because, despite his polish, Toussaint never forgets what it feels like to wear chains. By the late 1790s, the colony is a war zone of clashing ideologies and broken alliances. French planters want their empire back. Mixed-race elites want equality, but not too much of it. The British want to grab the island for themselves. The Spanish want to split it. And in the middle, you and Toussaint, trying to hold the thing together with bayonets and promises. There's a moment, quiet, almost forgotten by history, when you both sit in silence on a hillside overlooking a burned-out estate. You ask him, "What if we win? What then?" Toussaint just stares into the smoke and says, "Then we begin again." You never forget that. And yet, cracks are forming. Toussaint starts to negotiate with France again. He still believes the Republic can be reasoned with, that Black Haitians can be free and French citizens. You? You believe Napoleon is sharpening his knife. And you're right. In 1802, Napoleon sends his brother-in-law, General Leclerc, to take back the colony, with 30,000 troops. This isn't a peacekeeping mission. It's a full-scale invasion. The fires you helped start all those years ago weren't enough. Not yet. So, you light them again. Your strategies change. You burn supply lines, flood fields, and unleash guerrilla ambushes that leave French columns bewildered. Yellow fever helps. It's the secret rebel general. The French die in droves, their bodies rotting in shallow graves. One officer writes home, "The island itself is our enemy." But amidst this chaos, the unthinkable happens. Toussaint is captured in a French ambush, tricked into negotiations, and shipped to France in chains. He dies in a frozen prison cell months later. You never see him again. And now the question hits like a thunderclap. Who leads the revolution now? Every eye turns to you. The man with no patience for compromise, no love for empire, no room left in his heart for mercy. It's your war now. The man you once called mentor is gone. Toussaint Louverture, the Black Napoleon, has vanished into a cold alpine cell, and the revolution feels suddenly leaderless. But not for long, because all eyes swivel toward you. Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the tiger, the man they say eats iron and breathes fire. You don't exactly volunteer. The mantle falls on you the way a rock slide falls on a mountain goat, suddenly and without room to dodge. But deep down, you've been preparing for this since the day your back first met the lash. Your first act as leader? Break the illusion. You tell your followers, plainly, France will never give us peace. You're done with petitions and appeals to French liberty. You've tasted their version of égalité, and it's dipped in blood and hypocrisy. The rebels divide. Some still cling to hope, especially the mixed-race elite, who had property and power under the old system. But you're no fan of moderation. You send envoys to silence the hesitant, absorb the loyal, and exile or eliminate the rest. The revolution has a new tone, grim, focused, and brutal. Historians still argue whether this was strategy or instinct. Were you consolidating power like a born general, or did rage blind you into becoming exactly the kind of tyrant you fought against? Depends on the historian. Depends on the day. But what's undeniable? You get results. Let's not sugarcoat it. You've burned enough sugar fields to earn that pun. Your leadership style is closer to a buzzsaw than a baton. You ride from region to region, reorganizing rebel bands into formal regiments, replacing amateur commanders with hardened killers. Your messengers gallop between camps like lightning, delivering terse orders sealed in wax and sweat. And your uniform? No more rags. You wear the trappings of a general now. Blue coat, gold epaulettes, saber gleaming in the Caribbean sun. Your horse has silver shoes. Your glare clears rooms. You don't just fight the French. You unleash war upon them. Napoleon's General Leclerc watches his mighty army dissolve like sugar in boiling water. Yellow fever does half the job, but you finish the rest. Your ambushes grow more elaborate. You poison wells, collapse bridges, and bait supply columns into ravines where they're met with muskets, fire, and drum beats from the trees. In one particularly haunting tale, likely exaggerated but too juicy to skip, you reportedly tied a captured French officer to a stake in the jungle and left him for the mosquitoes. When they found him days later, he was nothing but a chewed-up lesson. And yet, for all your fury, you're still running a country in the middle of war. So you draft declarations, reorganize agriculture, more on that later, and commission flags. The first one? You take the French tricolor, rip out the white stripe, and stitch the blue and red back together. That's not subtle. That's a message. Still, even you can't fight alone. You rely on generals like Christophe and Pétion, men with different styles, sometimes different goals, but for now, you need them. You promise them land, titles, and a future if they follow your lead. And then, you pull your boldest move yet. You send a letter to Leclerc. In it, you say that Haiti will never be French again. That there will be no treaties, no backroom deals, only fire and freedom. You sign it, General-in-Chief Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Leclerc, weakened, furious, and rapidly decomposing from disease and defeat, writes back something predictably rude. Then he dies of yellow fever. His successor, Rochambeau, tries cruelty, public executions, hanging dogs wearing tricolor sashes, even deploying hunting dogs trained to tear rebels apart. But it's too late. The tide has turned. You've turned it. By late 1803, the French are boxed in, their supply lines cut, their soldiers starving. You lay siege to their final stronghold, Cap Français. In one of the great ironies of the war, Rochambeau, surrounded and humiliated, has to surrender to you, the enslaved man, the upstart, the brute who somehow outmaneuvered the best France had to offer. The terms? They get to leave. You let them board ships and sail away. Some of your soldiers grumble, but you know what you're doing. Let them crawl home and tell France what you've done. On January 1st, 1804, in the city of Gonaives, you stand before a crowd of generals and freed men, holding a piece of paper that declares, "We must live independent or die." You announce the birth of Haiti, the first black republic in the world, and the only successful slave uprising in history to found a nation. You name yourself Governor General for life, but everyone already sees what's coming. The man who beat an empire isn't going to settle for a modest title. There's a detail some overlook. After the ceremony, you reportedly invited a white French planter to read the declaration aloud, then shot him mid-sentence. Was it symbolic? Was it rage? Was it even true? Scholars debate it endlessly. You don't clarify, because for you the message is clear. The age of masters is over, and the age of Dessalines has begun. The French are gone. Their ships vanish over the Caribbean horizon like a bad memory finally chased away. But you're not done remembering. You can't forget. Not the chains, not the lash, not the endless fields that swallowed so many of your people. No, now comes the part you've been waiting for. The part where you stop surviving and start reshaping the world in your own image. But first, there's the matter of your old commander, Toussaint Louverture. You visit his former home, the now empty La Marmalade estate. You stand there, silent, listening to the wind through the cane fields. No words, just that deep volcanic silence of a man deciding to never be betrayed again. Your next moves are swift, symbolic, and loud enough for the world to hear. You declare yourself Governor General for life with absolute authority. A few months later, that modest-sounding title melts away. You crown yourself Emperor Jacques I of Haiti. Yes, Emperor. In a ceremony that would make even Napoleon blink twice, you appear draped in a crimson velvet robe, heavy with gold embroidery. You wear a silver crown, trumpets blare, a cannon thunders over the bay. There's silk, there's incense. There are even velvet thrones imported from Europe, still stained with the irony of their origin. Some of your own people squirm at this. You just fought a war to destroy monarchy, they whisper. Now you're dressing like royalty? Historians still argue whether your imperial ambitions were a survival mechanism, one man trying to hold together a fragile new nation, or an ego trip on a scale that made Versailles look modest. You don't bother explaining yourself. You don't believe in explanations. You believe in symbols, and the symbol here is clear. A black man in gold brocade, ruling a nation built from the ashes of slavery. No one can ignore that image. You even write a constitution. Well, sort of. You dictate one, and it's unlike anything else in the Western Hemisphere at the time. One clause declares that all Haitians are black, regardless of actual skin color. Another forbids white people from owning land in Haiti unless they were already naturalized citizens. A third clause? It abolishes slavery, not just for Haiti, but as a moral commandment. You're not just building a country, you're redefining what a free country even means. But it's not all declarations and parades. Running a nation is messier than torching one. Your country is shattered, the North is devastated, infrastructure is a memory, farms have gone wild, and the people, exhausted, traumatized, suspicious, aren't quite ready to rally under a single crown. So, you rule with a clenched fist. You travel by horseback across Haiti, inspecting plantations, enforcing discipline, personally overseeing justice. Your justice? Let's call it swift and public. There's one story, half truth, half legend, of you ordering a corrupt tax collector to be buried up to his neck in sand, then left for the tide. Whether or not it happened, the fear it inspired worked beautifully. You revive old plantations, but now they're nationalized. Technically, the land belongs to the people, but you enforce obligatory labor, which sounds suspiciously like the old system, just with new masters. You tell the people, work the fields or the nation dies, they grumble. Some call it slavery under a different name. You call it survival. Meanwhile, the rest of the world pretends you don't exist. The US refuses to recognize Haitian independence because, well, there's that whole slavery thing happening in their southern states. European powers? Same deal. They shun you like a contagious revolution. But one man does write to you. Thomas Jefferson. Sort of. He sends an envoy to say, please don't export your ideas. You smile, politely, then send back a bottle of Haitian rum and a map of the Americas. Behind the scenes, your cabinet simmers. Rival generals like Alexandre Pétion and Henri Christophe play nice in public, but you know the game. You've played it before. Everyone wants a piece of the new pie, but they're not ready for your recipe. One of your biggest headaches? Class tensions. The mixed-race elite, many of whom supported the early revolution but owned slaves themselves, now bristle at your leadership. They don't like being ruled by a man who once carried sugarcane. They prefer wigs, lace cuffs, and French manners. You prefer cannons. You start reshuffling loyalties, promoting generals from the lower ranks, offering land to loyalists, exiling or quietly eliminating anyone who questions your divine right to rule. One night, a celebration is held at the palace in Port-au-Prince. Wine flows, musicians play. You raise a glass and declare, "Let the blood of tyrants stain the sea before I let Haiti fall." People cheer, nervously. And yet, underneath the pageantry, a tremor. You forged a nation, yes, but forging also means fire. And fires are hard to control. You begin to sense it in the streets, in the faces that stop smiling when you pass, in the sudden silence when your name is mentioned. You've become the symbol of Haiti's independence, but you're also becoming something else, a man feared more than loved. It's early 1804, and Haiti is yours, or at least that's what your coronation robes seem to suggest. But beneath the velvet and metals, you know the truth. The island is a bruised, half-starved ghost of its former self. You've driven out the French, declared independence, and crowned yourself emperor, and now you decide it's time to make sure no one ever tries to take it back. So you order something that will haunt your name for centuries. The massacre. You've already expelled the French military, yes, but thousands of white settlers remain. Former slave owners, merchants, priests, widows, and children. They're unarmed, and they're terrified. Some beg for protection, others try to blend in. A few even claim they supported the revolution. You don't care. You believe that as long as white people remain in Haiti, the seed of re-enslavement remains. And you're not about to let the seed sprout. So you issue secret orders to your generals. Remove them. All of them. Over the course of several months in early 1804, across towns and cities from Cap Haitien to Jacmel, your soldiers carry out what is now called the 1804 massacre. Entire white families are slaughtered, men, women, children. Some are dragged from homes and executed in public squares. Others are drowned in rivers, burned alive, or hacked down in their own kitchens. One chilling detail from a witness account. In Cap Haitien, executioners reportedly wore white clothing, stained deliberately red to mock the victims. It may not be true, or maybe it's too true. You give strict instructions that foreign nationals, Polish soldiers who defected to fight for the rebels, a few German merchants, even some sympathetic whites are to be spared. But most others, they're erased. It's not done in a frenzy. It's systematic, coordinated, calculated. And you, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, sign off on all of it. Historians still argue. Was this genocide? Was it justified revenge for centuries of enslavement? Was it an unavoidable purge to prevent future invasion, or the worst political mistake of your reign? The question floats through classrooms and conferences like smoke from a fire no one can put out. You don't explain. You just issue a proclamation. Haiti is now a black republic, the first and only one of its kind, and it will stay that way. To reinforce this message, you start renaming things. Cities, rivers, mountains. French names are torn down like rotten curtains. Cap Francais becomes Cap Haitien. Leo Gain, Go Naives. They all get new stories, new meanings. You want no trace of the old world left standing. Your speeches take on a different tone now, less hopeful, more vengeful. I have avenged America, you say from balconies and barracks, as if speaking not just for Haitians, but for every enslaved soul across the hemisphere. And honestly, you have a point. You did what no one else dared. You crushed the colonial system. You kicked out Europe's most powerful army. You built a sovereign nation from chains and ash. The 1804 massacre isn't just a violent chapter, it's a message. Don't come back. The problem is, now you have to govern a haunted country. The soil is rich, yes, but it's soaked in trauma. The economy is in shambles. The cities are half ruins. The people are tired, wounded, and beginning to wonder what kind of peace this really is. To rebuild Haiti, you know it can't just be freedom and parties. People need to work. So you pass your next big decree, forced plantation labor. Only this time, it's not whites overseeing black bodies. It's black overseers overseeing black bodies. And no one is thrilled. You tell the people this is not slavery, it's national duty. But it feels like slavery. The new plantations are called agrarian military units. You break the island into regions, assign generals, impose quotas. Those who refuse to work the fields are arrested, or worse. Your logic? Simple. If everyone farms, the country eats. If the country eats, it survives. You even order that export goods, sugar, coffee, indigo, keep flowing. You want foreign powers to see Haiti as strong, self sustaining. You want to prove you didn't just burn a colony, you replaced it. But the optics? Not great. Internationally, abolitionists are confused. Is this the same revolution that shouted liberty from the mountaintops? Some American papers compare you to Robespierre. Others call you Emperor of Blood. One cartoon from London depicts you sitting on a throne made of skulls. You don't care. You send back letters that open with, "To the cowardly nations who ignored our suffering." You have no time for lectures from slave-holding empires. Back home, though, your people are growing restless. Whispers spread. The emperor is paranoid. The emperor is losing control. Some call you cursed, others call you cursed and divine. It depends on whether they've eaten that week. You ride through the countryside in full regalia, inspecting plantations, holding court, issuing judgments. You demand loyalty. You punish betrayal. You reward those who work hard and punish those who fall behind. It's equal parts nation building and fear theater. One day, a boy drops his hoe in front of you, trembling. He tells you he's too tired to keep working. You look at him for a long time. Then you dismount your horse and help him gather it. Gently, quietly, you say, "The land is tired too. We'll rest soon." It's one of the few moments of softness you allow. But it won't last, because something is coming, something sharp, something cloaked in the smiles of men who fought beside you for years. And you, Dessalines, will not see it in time. You ride at dawn, always at dawn. It's the hour when the dew still clings to the cane leaves, when the air is thick but not yet suffocating. It's also when your mind is sharpest, your instincts clearest, or so you've always told yourself. But lately, something's off. You see it in the eyes of your generals. Christophe, Pétion, Gabar, men who once toasted your victories, now glance sideways when you enter a room. They bow a little slower. Their letters grow more formal. You've trained your whole life to sniff out betrayal, but it's hard to smell poison when it comes dressed in perfume. You keep moving anyway. Because in the South, a merchant has been accused of hoarding grain. In the North, a plantation's sugar output is suspiciously low. And somewhere near Léogane, there's been a quiet uprising. Just a handful of former soldiers refusing orders. But still, you ride, you inspect, you discipline. But in your quietest hours, those rare slivers between midnight and rum, you wonder if you've become the very thing you once vowed to destroy. Historians still argue, was this the natural descent of any post-revolutionary leader? Or did you cross a line long before the crown touched your brow? Either way, you feel it now. The weight, the blood, the loneliness of command. And still you hold on. Because Haiti, somehow, is still standing. Under your iron-fisted order, the country is exporting sugar again. Fields are operational. Roads are being rebuilt. A national school opens in Port-au-Prince. You establish a standing army with regional commands. You even tinker with the idea of Haitian currency, though good luck convincing foreign traders to use it. And then, in what can only be described as a mic drop to the world, you draft a letter to Napoleon. Yes, Napoleon. You inform him that Haiti exists, that it endures, and that he, for all his cannons and medals, lost. You seal the envelope in red wax, as if the blood of 1,000 revolts is baked into the message. No reply ever comes. Meanwhile, something almost resembling normal life begins to flicker. Markets reopen. Peasants bring mangoes and beans to sell. Drums echo again from village gatherings. Real music, not just war chants. Children splash in rivers. Women wear color again, deep reds, tropical blues. For a moment, the country breathes. But it's a shallow breath, because your reforms have made enemies out of nearly everyone. The mixed-race elites despise you for taking their lands. The black peasantry fears you for forcing them back to the fields. Even your inner circle, those glittering medals and gritted smiles, are starting to crack. The biggest threats? Christophe and Pétion. Christophe, your general in the north, commands loyalty like a second skin. He's disciplined, brilliant, and ambitious. He builds forts, drills troops, dreams of castles. You trust him about as far as you can throw one of his cannons. Pétion is different, soft-spoken, charming, a thinker, a man of words more than bullets. He commands the South, and the people there love him. He speaks of republics, of elections, of everything you fought against. And now, they're whispering to each other. You try to stay ahead. You issue new edicts. You double down on inspections. You send messages. coded cold to gauge their loyalties. But what you don't do, rest, trust. Look over your shoulder soon enough. There's a moment, just a few weeks before the end, when an old woman in a mountain village gives you a carved figurine. It's you, seated on a throne, but the crown is cracked. You laugh, politely. Then you give her a coin. But that night, you can't sleep. You sit alone, staring at the wooden statue, thumb pressed into the split in its crown. You murmur, "Let them try." They do. On October 17th, 1806, you ride out near Pont Larnage, heading toward Port-au-Prince. The air is humid. Your guards ride close, but not too close. You trust them. Most of them. You don't see the ambush until it's too late. Rifles fire from the underbrush. Screams. Hooves. You spin your horse, pistol in hand, but it's no use. You're surrounded. A familiar face appears. General Alexandre Pétion himself, cold eyes steady. One shot hits you in the chest, another in the arm. You fall. You try to rise. Curse at them. You're Jean-Jacques Dessalines. You don't die on the side of the road. But they keep shooting. Some say you're stabbed afterward, just to be sure. Others say your body is stripped, dragged through the streets of Port-au-Prince. Children are told, this is what happens to tyrants. Women throw rocks at your corpse. Then again, some say you weren't killed at all, that your soul fled into the mountains, became a storm spirit, still haunting the cane fields, whispering in the ears of revolutionaries yet unborn. Historians, they argue, as always. But this much is certain. The Emperor of Haiti, once enslaved, once invincible, dies not in battle, not in glory, but in betrayal, under the sun he once fought to own. Your blood stains the dirt, but your story doesn't end there. Not even close. The boots of your assassins are barely dry when Haiti begins to fracture. The very men who fired the shots now scramble to carve up your empire like hungry wolves over a fallen bull. And you're suddenly more powerful than ever because the myth of Dessalines is loose now, and no one can put it back in its cage. Your body lies in Port-au-Prince for days before anyone dares to bury it. Even in death, people don't know what to do with you. Were you a savior, a monster, a founding father, or a failed emperor? No one can agree. But they all know one thing. The man who declared Haiti free is now a ghost they can't ignore. The nation doesn't mourn, not in the open. There are no state funerals, no long lines of weeping citizens. The silence is deafening. But in some corners, in the back alleys of Léogane or under the banyan trees of the Artibonite Valley, old women whisper your name into candles. They call you Papa Dessalines. They say you were cruel because the world was cruel first. They say you did what had to be done. And meanwhile, the country begins to unravel. Henri Christophe takes control of the north. Alexandre Pétion holds the south. Haiti is sliced in two, like a mango cleaved straight down the pit. Christophe styles himself king, yes, king, and starts building a literal castle at Sans-Souci. Pétion establishes a republic and opens the doors to the mulatto elite. Two men, two visions, and both haunted by the memory of you. Christophe tries to imitate your military rigor, but without your fury, it feels hollow. He imposes forced labor again, just like you did, but calls it agricultural duty. His subjects comply for a while until the resentment bubbles back to the surface. Eventually, even Christophe can't keep the lid on the boiling pot. Pétion, on the other hand, tries the soft approach. He distributes land to soldiers and former slaves, builds schools, gives speeches about equality. But there's always the lurking fear. If you give too much freedom, won't the system collapse again? Historians still debate who inherited your legacy more faithfully. Christophe, with his castles and cannons, or Pétion, with his books and ballots? Neither man lasts. Christophe dies by suicide, reportedly shooting himself with a silver bullet. Pétion dies of fever. Both men pass like shadows. And yet, your statue keeps rising. Yes, statues, monuments, streets named after you. The same nation that tore your body apart now begins to stitch your name into its very fabric. In 1843, decades after your death, your remains are exhumed and reburied with honors. The president of Haiti calls you the founding father. Your birthday becomes a national holiday. School children memorize your Declaration of Independence. You become a sacred contradiction, the man who killed thousands to give millions their first taste of freedom. But of course, not everyone agrees. To this day, your name causes arguments in classrooms and cafes. Were you a hero, a tyrant, the Black Robespierre, the Caribbean Caesar, or just a man who saw too much horror to believe in mercy? One thing's for sure, you changed the rules. You didn't ask for permission to be free. You took it. You didn't wait for European philosophers to catch up, put Enlightenment ideals to the test with a rifle in one hand and a torch in the other. And when the world turned away from your revolution, you screamed louder. In the modern world, your name echoes through resistance movements. In Harlem, activists chant your words. In Johannesburg, your portrait hangs beside Mandela's. In Port-au-Prince, the poor still march with banners that read Dessalines' lives. And somewhere deep in the mountain forests of Haiti, there are still shrines, small, quiet, lit with candles and rum, where your spirit is called down. Not for revenge, not for rage, but for strength, for clarity, for backbone. Because in the end, Jean-Jacques Dessalines wasn't born to govern. You were born to break things, chains, empires, histories, and some things once broken never get put back the same. Your revolution didn't just shake Haiti, it cracked the spine of colonialism itself. The year is 1804, and while you parade through the ruins of Cap Haitien wearing imperial robes, the rest of the world is watching through squinted eyes, unsure of what to make of you. The European powers blink in disbelief. A slave rebellion? That won? That formed a functioning, well, mostly functioning government? That declared itself a black empire? This wasn't in their playbook. In the southern United States, slaveholders panic. They increase patrols, pass harsher slave codes, and whisper your name like a curse. Dessalines, they hiss, who murdered the French in their beds. Your name becomes a ghost story for plantation masters. The Haitian Revolution becomes a taboo subject in American newspapers, tucked between shipping reports and crop prices, treated like a disease that might spread by word alone. But for the enslaved, for the colonized, you are lightning in a bottle. Across the Caribbean, Jamaica, Barbados, Cuba, whispers of your victory flow like smoke through the sugarcane. Songs are sung about you in patois and Creole. Some even believe you're still alive, riding through the hills with a flaming sword, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And in South America, one man pays particular attention, Simón Bolívar. Years later, in 1815, when Bolívar is floundering in his campaign to liberate Spanish colonies, he sails to Haiti. Pétion is in charge now, not you, but it's your revolution that paved the way. Pétion gives Bolívar money, weapons, men, and a condition: abolish slavery in the lands you free. Bolívar agrees. So, if you're ever tempted to ask, did Dessalines really change the world? The answer is a solid rum-soaked yes. The first free republic in Latin America? Funded by a Haitian Revolution you led. Still, the rest of the world isn't sending fruit baskets. France, for one, is fuming. They don't acknowledge Haiti's independence, not officially, not for decades. And when they do, they slap a bill on the table: reparations. Not for Haiti's suffering, no, for the lost property of French slaveholders. In 1825, under threat of naval invasion, Haiti agrees to pay 150 million francs to France. That's billions in today's currency. Haiti, born in chains, scorched in fire, and built on blood, starts its first century of freedom in debt. Historians still debate whether this economic stranglehold was the single greatest blow to Haiti's future. Some say it delayed development by a century. Others argue the true damage came from internal instability. But everyone agrees on this. You didn't die for this. You didn't fight to pay your oppressors. And yet, your dream of a black nation standing tall, free of chains and masters, remains alive. Bruised, betrayed, but alive. Inside Haiti, your legacy is contested terrain. There are the conservatives who blame your bloodshed for the nation's long isolation. They say if you'd just been less cruel, France might have welcomed Haiti into the fold. Then there are the radicals who wear your face on t-shirts and chant your slogans during protests. They say if you'd lived longer, the revolution would have stuck. You were the fire. After you died, the flame flickered, but never quite went out. There's a church in the Artibonite Valley that claims to have one of your swords. Another shrine claims to hold a lock of your hair. True? Who knows? But belief often matters more than proof. People need their ghosts, and your ghost is busy. You appear in poems, in protest graffiti, in carnival parades. You're carved into currency, etched into metals, painted on cracked concrete walls. For every critic who calls you a butcher, there's a child who learns your name before they learn the alphabet. You've become Haiti's myth and mirror, an emperor of contradictions. One moment, You're the iron-fisted tyrant, demanding sugar quotas with a saber drawn. The next, you're the barefoot rebel, whispering freedom under moonlight. You're the burning machete and the broken shackle, the vengeance and the victory. And maybe that's the real truth of your life. You never got to be just a man. The world made you a symbol, a warning, a rallying cry, a curse. And whether whispered in prayer or muttered in fear, your name still cuts through history like the blade you once carried into battle. The further time pulls you from the present, the clearer your silhouette becomes, etched not in the clean lines of textbooks, but in smudged memory, flickering murals, and stories told at dusk. In 19th century Haiti, your name lingers on the lips of presidents, rebels, and street hawkers alike. When a coup brews, they whisper, "This is what Dessalines would have done." When a president cracks down too hard, others mutter, "He thinks he's Dessalines." You've become a measuring stick no one wants to admit they're using. And yet, for most of the 1800s, no official government truly claims you. Payon's Southern Republic tries to distance itself. Too much blood. Christophe's Northern Monarchy borrows your fire, but not your fury. Successive leaders lean more toward European tastes. Powdered wigs, imported silverware, Parisian manners. You're too raw, too loud, too Haitian. So they build statues, then hide them. They name streets, then ignore them. But the people never forget. In voodoo ceremonies deep in the countryside, your name is still invoked, not as a god, but as a warrior spirit, a los of vengeance. They say you walk with Ogun, the voodoo god of iron, fire, and revolution. They leave rum for you, cigars, a red sash on a branch, and they ask for justice, for courage, for a spine made of steel. One whispered detail? Some say that in a certain valley near Jacmel, if you stand under the full moon and call your name 3 times, you'll hear hoofbeats in the distance, your ghost still riding, saber in hand, looking for unfinished business. Historians roll their eyes, but even they agree, your death didn't silence you. In the early 20th century, Haiti's leaders begin to rediscover you. By 1904, the centennial of independence, the government finally embraces your legacy in full. Huge celebrations erupt in Gonaives, where you first declared Haiti free. Your portrait is everywhere. Stern eyes, sharp cheekbones, that unforgettable glare. Schoolchildren chant your name. Officials call you the father of the nation. But as always, praise comes with polishing. The speeches skip over the 1804 massacre. The textbooks minimize the forced labor. They call you firm instead of ruthless, patriotic instead of paranoid. The revolution is packaged neatly, like a museum exhibit, clean, curated, and a little too quiet. Meanwhile, the country you birthed continues to struggle. Foreign debt crushes Haiti's economy. Political infighting turns deadly. From 1915 to 1934, the United States occupies Haiti. Yes, the first free black republic, now under the boot of another imperialist force. American soldiers patrol your streets. White Marines control your treasury. Some of them don't even know who you were, but the resistance knows. Rebels in the hills, called Cacos, invoke your name in battle songs. One leader, Charlemagne Perrault, paints himself as your spiritual heir. When the Americans kill him and crucify his body on a door as a warning, the image backfires. Haitians see another Dessalines, another martyr, another legend, and your legend only grows. By the mid-20th century, a new dictator rises, François Papa Doc Duvalier. He loves your legacy, a little too much. He uses it like a shield and a sword. His speeches are peppered with your words. His propaganda posters show your faces side by side like father and son. But Duvalier doesn't stop there. He claims you walk with him, that your spirit possesses him, that when he speaks, it's your voice. He even declares that he is Dessalines reborn. You would probably have thrown him off a cliff. Still, the tactic works, for a while. Fear blends with myth, and your image becomes a tool of the state, a ghost wearing a necktie, looming behind policy decisions, executions, and military parades. Yet through it all, the people hold on to their version of you. Not the statue, not the portrait, the man, the barefoot rebel, the fire starter, the one who rose from sugar fields and screamed into the face of empire, the one who said no, again and again and again. The 21st century rolls in like a heavy tide, and you, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, are still here. Not in body, of course, but in spirit, in slogans, in the simmering rage and proud defiance that still churn beneath the surface of Haitian life. Port-au-Prince is noisy now, buzzing motorcycles, endless honking, crumbling roads stitched together with street vendors and clouds of diesel exhaust. But even amidst the chaos, your shadow stretches long. On October 17th, every year, Haitians remember the day of your assassination. Some lay flowers at your statue in Champs de Mars. Others march in silence, fists raised. Some pray, some chant, and some, as always, fight. Because your memory isn't gentle. It's not the kind that fades into bronze and footnotes. You're the kind of history that pokes, that bites, that refuses to be archived. One of the largest protests in recent Haitian memory, massive, nationwide uprisings in 2019, was held on your death day. Protesters carried banners with your face, demanding an end to corruption, to foreign exploitation, to the ghosts of colonialism still clinging to Haiti's throat. They shouted, "Dessalines is watching," as if you might descend from the hills at any moment, saber flashing, eyes ablaze. You'd like that. But even now, people argue about you. In schools, your story is taught, but often edited, sanitized. The massacre is downplayed, the crown is awkwardly glossed over. They call you a firm ruler and a founding hero, rarely ruthless, never vengeful. As if your life could be wrapped in ribbon and stored on a tidy bookshelf. Historians still debate your legacy, of course, always. Some accuse you of being a paranoid despot. Others argue that you were a product of your time, cornered by centuries of racial terror, doing what no one else dared. And then there's the new wave of scholars, digging deeper into your decrees, your land reforms, your economic policies. They say, look, there was vision here. There was strategy. There was nation building beneath the fire. But numbers don't lie. Haiti, as of now, remains the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It has faced more than 30 coups since independence. Natural disasters have flattened its cities. Foreign troops have marched in and out like tourists with rifles. Presidents have come and gone, often in exile or under house arrest. And still, your face endures, painted on murals, printed on t-shirts, etched into protest art. Your name, Dessalines, still thunders from podiums during campaign seasons. Still gets whispered in voodoo ceremonies where candles flicker beside skulls and prayer beads. Still causes arguments in classrooms, dinner tables, radio shows, because you were never meant to be forgotten. You represent the unbearable question that Haiti can't stop asking itself. What does freedom cost? Your answer, of course, was everything. All the blood, all the fear, all the smoke and grief. If that's what it took to break the chains, then so be it. But that's not an easy legacy to carry. It weighs heavy, especially on a nation still trying to figure out whether it's free or merely independent. Yet, in strange ways, your vision has lived on. Black revolutionaries across the globe cite your name. From the Maroons of Jamaica to the civil rights firebrands in the US to post-colonial leaders in Africa, your ghost keeps marching. You're quoted in speeches, projected on protest buildings, sampled in hip-hop tracks. There's even a Haitian metal band named Dessalines. No kidding. They scream your name into amplifiers beneath a flag stitched with skulls and machetes. And let's not forget the diaspora. Millions of Haitians live abroad now, in New York, Miami, Paris, Montreal. And no matter how far they roam, your image follows. In Brooklyn barbershops and Montreal bookstores, in Little Haiti in Miami, and the back seats of New York taxis, your legacy spills out in Creole accented stories about the man who made us free. You're like the ancestor they've never met, but fiercely protect. And when Haiti makes the news, usually for the wrong reasons, those same Haitians take a breath and say, Dessalines wouldn't have stood for this. Maybe not. Or maybe if you were still around, you'd be yelling again, demanding discipline, demanding unity, demanding justice at the tip of a saber. Or maybe you'd be sitting quietly, drinking rum from a chipped mug, watching the fireworks of your revolution still echoing 200 years later, and whispering, not bad for a man who started life in chains. Immortal, but not invincible, remembered, but not always understood. Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the man who changed everything and couldn't change himself fast enough to survive it. But let's rewind a little. Because while your legacy looms like a thunderhead, the path to that legacy wasn't paved with gold or even conviction. It was paved with contradiction. You began your rise as a lieutenant under Toussaint Louverture, the brilliant tactician whose grace with words nearly rivaled his skill in war. You studied him closely How he wrote treaties, how he negotiated with generals, how he promised freedom with one hand and restored order with the other. And then, you betrayed him. Let's not sugarcoat it. When the time came to choose, you sided with France. Briefly. You helped Louverture's enemies, you gambled, and you lost him to a frozen prison cell in the Jura Mountains of France, where he died alone, shivering, far from the cane fields that raised you both. Historians still argue whether that was ambition or cold necessity. Did you betray Louverture out of envy, or because you knew his caution would only lead to chains once more? Either way, you took his place, and you swore you would never compromise like he did. But compromise is what makes nations, and that was never your talent. Your empire was forged in trauma, your own and your people's. You didn't rule like a diplomat. You ruled like a man who had watched his mother whipped until she bled, like a man who still bore scars on his back from men who smiled while they branded him. You brought all that into your throne room. It never left you. You didn't just remember pain, you wielded it. You demanded obedience not out of vanity, but because you'd learned, painfully, that disorder meant death. That revolutions are fragile. That a moment's hesitation, a few wrong friends, a little too much mercy, and it all comes undone. So you kept your boots polished and your saber close. You punished theft with death. You punished disloyalty with erasure. You made examples out of the guilty and sometimes the merely inconvenient. In your mind, there was no other way. Not in Haiti. Not after what it took to get here. And yet, despite the fire and fury, you did try to build. That's what people often forget. You weren't just a destroyer. You drafted a constitution, short, sharp, defiant. It outlawed slavery forever, declared racial equality, made black identity a matter of citizenship, not complexion. It was radical not just in its content, but in its tone. It said, this is who we are now. We don't care what you think. You attempted economic policies too. Not all popular, not all successful, but you tried. You knew Haiti couldn't survive on revolution alone. You tried to make sugar flow act, tried to organize the land, tried to keep exports moving. But people didn't want orders anymore. They wanted peace. You couldn't give them both. And then there were the women, rarely mentioned in the formal records, but everywhere in your rise, women who cooked for soldiers, passed messages under the noses of colonial officers, healed the wounded with herbs and prayer. One legend tells of a woman named Défilé who risked her life to bury your mutilated body after your assassination. She wrapped you in cloth, they say, dug with her bare hands. She didn't have a speech or a crown. She just knew a man who had freed her people couldn't be left to rot in the gutter. It's hard to say what she saw in you. Maybe the same thing many Haitians still see, a deeply flawed, brutally necessary force of history. And here's the most ironic part. The very things that made you unbearable as a ruler, your obsession with loyalty, your refusal to compromise, your fear of betrayal, those are the things that helped win the revolution in the first place. You didn't build a perfect nation, but you built a beginning. And beginnings, by nature, are messy. You began your life in chains. You ended it in a pool of blood. But in between, you did something no one thought possible. You won. That word, simple, sharp, heavy, is what makes your story so terrifying to those who once ruled. You didn't just rebel. You didn't just fight. You defeated the most powerful empire of your time. You dragged France's pride through sugar fields and left it broken on the shores of Gonaives. And when the smoke cleared, you didn't say thank you. You didn't ask for a seat at the table. You flipped the table. And yet, you were always running out of time. When you first declared Haiti's independence on January 1st, 1804, you read the proclamation aloud in a booming voice. The parchment shook in your hands not from fear, but from fury. You condemned France with language so raw it peeled paint off the walls. France has repaid our magnanimity with chains, you said. Let us swear to die rather than live under its domination. But here's what most people forget. You also signed that declaration not as president, not even leader. You signed it as general-in-chief. Because even then, even at that victorious moment, you knew this wasn't over. You were still preparing for battle. Even peace was a battlefield to you. You tried to establish a sense of permanence. You organized military zones. You divided the land into state-run farms. You believed the only way to keep Haiti alive was to keep everyone disciplined. You saw what happened when empires turned soft. You weren't going to let that happen here. But there was no blueprint. You were making it up as you went along. France had taken everything from the colony, including infrastructure. There were no banks, no universities, no diplomatic corps. You were trying to build Rome in a week with bricks made of ash and sugar. And it wasn't just logistics. It was people. You had to convince a nation of former slaves that order did not mean slavery, that duty did not mean chains, that working the fields again was for their own freedom, not their masters. They didn't buy it. One old man, according to local legend, spat at a tax collector and shouted, "I did not fight to sweat in someone else's field again." His voice was one among many. Grumblings spread like cracks in a fortress wall. Your solution? Crack down harder. Because if they wouldn't work for Haiti, you figured, they'd destroy it. Historians still debate your system of state labor. Was it proto-communist? Was it just dressed-up feudalism? Did it save the economy or suffocate it? One fringe theory even claims that you were trying to forge a warrior state, a society built like an army, ready to defend itself at any moment, with no private interests allowed to fracture national strength. Think Sparta with machetes and red sashes. But that theory, like many, can't account for what happened next. The betrayal. Because let's be honest, you didn't just get overthrown. You got ambushed by the very men you called comrades. Pétion and Christophe, men who toasted independence with you, who marched beside you in the mud and fire, who once knelt before you. They turned. Quietly, strategically, fatally. Some say they feared your power. Others say they were jealous. Still others claim it was ideology. You believed in unity through control. They wanted division through autonomy. Whatever the reason, they knew one thing. You wouldn't share power. And so your end was arranged. Carefully, with uniforms and polished boots, with men who knew exactly how far to stand to keep you in their rifle sights. The day you died, the revolution didn't stop. It just forked. Haiti split, north and south, kingdom and republic. Christophe crowned himself king of the north. Literally, he built palaces, printed currency, declared a nobility. Pétion ruled the south with a more democratic flair, though not without bloodshed of his own. And you? You became the ghost they both tried to claim, then bury, then claim again. They painted over your memory in whatever colors suited their cause. One called you too cruel, the other too proud. Neither could escape your shadow. And yet, despite their efforts, it is your name, not theirs, that endures. The Haitian flag was redesigned, your image removed and then restored. Your speeches were suppressed, then resurrected. Your legacy became a battleground every bit as contested as the fields you once bled in. But slowly over time, a different truth began to emerge. Not the myth, not the monster, the man. You, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who once staggered barefoot across the sugarcane rows, who once whispered revolution over campfires, who once struck fear into the hearts of tyrants and hope into the hearts of the enslaved. You were brutal, but you were also brave. You were vengeful, but you were necessary. And sometimes, in history, that's enough. Time is cruel, but memory is pickier. It chooses what to keep and what to forget, what to polish and what to leave covered in blood and mud. And you, Dessalines, are one of those memories that refuses to be filed away neatly. You're still causing discomfort, still raising eyebrows, still stirring something that sounds like thunder in the bones of those who study you too long. Because the truth is, you didn't fit. Not then. Not now. You weren't the soft-spoken statesman like Toussaint Louverture, penning carefully worded appeals to the French. You weren't the constitutional liberal like Pétion, all talk of republics and compromise. You weren't Christophe, dreaming of European-style monarchy complete with powdered wigs and palaces. You were something else entirely. Something Haiti didn't know how to handle, and maybe still doesn't. But even now, in the corners of Haiti, where history still whispers, they haven't forgotten the man who stared down Napoleon's armies and lived to tell about it. There's a mural in the back streets of Port-au-Prince. It's faded but powerful. You standing barefoot, saber resting on your shoulder. Behind you, a crumbling colonial mansion, split down the center like a cracked tooth. The words below it read, Liberté ou la mort, nous pas John Blieu. Freedom or death, we will never forget you. The kids who pass it on the way to school don't always know your full story, but they know the name. And sometimes that's enough to start a fire. Meanwhile, your legacy spreads. Beyond borders, beyond time. Black liberation movements across the globe keep your image close. In the 1960s, Malcolm X invoked your revolution in his speeches. In the 1980s, Pan-Africanist activists wrote about you as the first Black anti-colonial head of state. In the 2020s, hashtags bearing your name trended during protests for racial justice and reparations. And still, historians circle back to the same question. Was the massacre necessary? Let's talk about it. In the wake of Haitian independence, you made a choice that would define your image forever. You ordered the systematic killing of thousands of white French men, some say all of them left on the island. The goal? To prevent any chance of recolonization, to ensure no future slave master would rise again. Women and children were mostly spared, but not always. The numbers vary. Some say 3,000. Others claim as many as 5,000, and the reaction was swift. Horrified. Even abolitionists in the West recoiled. The same people who cheered your freedom suddenly fell silent. Because freedom, it turned out, was easier to support when it didn't have blood on its boots. But you didn't flinch. You didn't apologize. You didn't explain. Because to you, the question wasn't, was it necessary? It was, what would you have done if it was your family? You knew France would never accept a free Black nation. Not without punishment, not without planning a return. You saw what they did to Louverture. You weren't about to wait around and find out what came next. And historians still fight over it. Some call it genocide. Others call it preemptive war. Some say it cost Haiti any chance at recognition. Others argue it bought Haiti its survival. Most agree it was monstrous. But then again, so was slavery. So was the Middle Passage. So was the branding, the rapes, the broken backs and cane fields. You didn't invent cruelty. You just mirrored it, brutally, unapologetically. And here's the thing. You were right. France did come back. Not with armies, but with bills, reparations, diplomatic isolation, debt, economic sabotage. You were gone by then, of course, your body long buried. But if ghosts could smirk, you'd probably say, told you. So now, Haiti stands scarred, stubborn, and somehow still singing. And it sings your name in half whispers and full-throated chants. It sings it in drums, in Vodou rhythms, in classrooms and on protest banners and in stories told by grandmothers whose eyes glaze over when they speak of Papa Dessalines. And maybe, just maybe, that's your real victory. Because empires rise and fall, crowns melt, statues crumble, but myths can walk through fire, and yours is still walking. There's something poetic about the fact that your name, Dessalines, is still not entirely settled. Say it in a university seminar, and someone inevitably raises their hand with a nervous, "But what about the massacre?" Say it in a Haitian slum, and someone claps their hand over their heart and whispers, "He died for us." Say it on a protest line, and someone starts chanting. And every time, the conversation shifts. Because you, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, don't just represent a person. You represent a decision. The moment when the enslaved said, enough. The moment when survival was no longer enough. The moment when revenge became policy. And that kind of moment doesn't age well in polite society. That's probably why you were so rarely celebrated in the decades after your death. Toussaint Louverture was easier to romanticize. He played nice with Europe, spoke French fluently, styled himself as the Black George Washington. You, on the other hand, made people deeply uncomfortable. You were rage wrapped in velvet, a dagger at the dinner table. But in a strange twist of fate, the world is beginning to catch up to you. Because now, more than ever, people are questioning the histories they've been told. They're peeking behind the velvet curtains of empire and realizing just how much blood was swept under the rug. Statues are falling. Curricula are shifting. Words like reparations and decolonization are echoing in places that once dismissed you as a footnote. And guess whose name keeps coming back? Yours. In documentaries, in books, in radical TikToks and lecture halls and art installations. A young painter in Brooklyn once said, Dessalines was the blueprint. And he wasn't just talking about revolution. He was talking about how to live free, how to claim space, how to speak truth, even when it burns bridges behind you. You're becoming, once again, the kind of figure people turn to when the old systems start to crack. And inside Haiti, the conversation is evolving too. Once, the upper classes spoke of you in hushed tones, if they mentioned you at all. Now schools proudly teach your military campaigns. Documentaries interview elders in your birthplace, Grand Riviere du Nord. Street murals show you in military uniform, machete raised toward a rising sun. They don't hide the violence, they frame it. This is what it took. Your old house? It's preserved now, or what's left of it. Tour guides speak reverently as they point out the stone walls. Some say the echo of your boots can still be heard on certain nights. Superstition? Maybe. But it fits. Because even if you've been mythologized, and you have, there's something real at the core of all this. Something that won't go away no matter how many scholars footnote you into submission. You were the moment, the line in the sand, the iron in Haiti's backbone. And for all the contradictions, all the debates, all the sleepless nights you probably gave future generations, there's one truth no one can erase. Haiti exists because of you. If you hadn't pushed harder, risked more, refused to compromise, maybe it would have crumbled before it even began. Maybe Napoleon would have reconquered it. Maybe the sugar fields would have reopened. Maybe Haitians would still be speaking of freedom, like a distant dream, instead of a birthright. Instead, they speak it with pride. And when they do, they remember the man who stood barefoot in the heat, looked the empire dead in the eye, and said, "Never again." You made sure of that. You made sure the rest of the world had to reckon with the idea that even the most oppressed people on earth could rise up, organize, and win. It changed everything. Maybe not immediately, maybe not even in your lifetime, but eventually, because you didn't just end an empire. You sparked 1,000 fires, and some of those fires are still burning. You stand at the edge of the story now, your body long gone, your empire long fallen, and yet your presence feels sharper than ever, like a blade glinting just beneath the surface of Haitian soil. If someone asks who built Haiti, they'll hear your name. If someone asks why it still stands, battered but unbowed, your face floats behind every answer. Not because you ruled long, not because you ruled well, but because you dared. You dared to imagine freedom not as a gift, but as a right worth bleeding for. And it's strange how full circle your journey feels now. Once, you were a nobody. A boy with no surname, born on a plantation with hands blistered before you could speak. You rose through ranks not because you were charming or pedigreed, but because you were terrifyingly relentless. You burned bridges, you burned entire cities, and somehow, in all that destruction, you carved out something that had never existed before. A nation of formerly enslaved people, governing themselves against the will of the world. You called it Haiti. Others called it impossible. But let's not pretend the ending was clean. You died betrayed, bullets in your back. Your corpse left in the street for days, dogs sniffing at your blood, your enemies smirking from balconies. No final speech, no grand procession, just silence and the quiet thud of boots walking away. It should have ended there, but it didn't, because something about your story keeps clawing back to the surface, in dusty books, in protest chants, in the beat of voodoo drums that sound like marching feet. You never got the funeral you deserved, but you got something bigger. Immortality. You live in every person who's ever said, "I'd rather die than be enslaved." You live in every people's uprising where the leaders are tired of smiling while they're crushed. You live in the soil of Haiti, yes, but also in South Africa, in Brazil, in Harlem, in Paris, in Kinshasa, in Port of Spain, in Oakland. Anywhere someone dreams of burning the system down to build something that smells like freedom. And your contradictions? They live too. You're the liberator who murdered, the visionary who refused to listen, the emperor who wore the crown like a noose. You weren't perfect, you weren't gentle, but you were never small. You didn't want statues. You wanted change. And even now, in the darkness of night, if you listen hard enough, you might hear it. The echo of your boots, the rasp of your voice, the clang of a saber drawn not in conquest, but in defense of dignity. Because in the end, you weren't just fighting France. You were fighting the idea that some people should live on their knees. And you won. Wind down. So now, as the last sparks of this story fade and the noise softens, let's breathe together. Close your eyes and imagine the hills of northern Haiti, quiet and dark, stars flickering above the cane fields where this all began. The air is warm, heavy with salt, soil, and something older, something defiant. You hear wind sliding through banana leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a single drum taps a slow, steady rhythm. That's your heartbeat. Or maybe his. You picture Dessalines, barefoot, silhouetted by firelight, staring into a future that still hasn't arrived, but refuses to disappear. You might not agree with everything he did. Most people don't. But in the soft hush of sleep where judgment dims and stories bloom, one thing feels true. He never wanted to be remembered. He wanted the world to change. And change never comes in straight lines. It comes with scars, with shattered myths, with truths too sharp to hold for long. But it does come. And maybe, just maybe, that's what matters. So rest now. Let the flames flicker out. Let the battlefield fade. Let the sabers lower. You've walked a long road tonight, through blood and banners, through chains and coronations. You've carried the weight of a revolution. Now you get to put it down. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts drift. The ghost of Dessalines will keep watch a while longer. And the night, just like his legacy, will hold you steady. End of script. Sweet dreams.